History has just been made here at the AJC Global Forum.
It is an assault on the values that bind us together as Americans.
Millions of people around the world have sent a powerful message. Hate will never prevail.
The war in Ukraine has begun.
Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
This is the most dangerous moment for Europe in a generation.
Authorities in Israel say they've killed the gunman who opened fire on a busy street in Tel Aviv.
Those attacks stoking fears of wider escalation.
It's part of a new wave of violence that has the country on edge.
A regime of brutal hangmen must never be allowed to have weapons of mass destruction.
Across Europe, anti-Semitic attacks have been rising for years.
Four people taken hostage at a synagogue in Texas has renewed concerns about the threats of anti-Semitism.
Unfortunately, we are seeing more and more of these incidents. There were neo-Nazis waving flags in Florida. There were synagogues defaced in Chicago. Here in Washington, D.C., there are Nazi swastikas on Union Station.
American Jews do think anti-Semitism is a problem. In fact, 9 in 10 do. And 82% said that anti-Semitism has increased in the last 5 years.
America is a nation divided politically and socially.
The Great Divide in American politics shows no sign of closing.
What might be done to lower the temperature just a bit?
China and Russia announced a new partnership, with China saying it'll back Russia's foreign policy aims.
Of Ukrainian refugees now being welcomed into Israel as a place of refuge.
We are here, the entire AJC team, welcoming the new 141 immigrants that came from Ukraine. We're very proud to take part in this amazing humanitarian initiative.
Change history together.
President Biden and 29 other world leaders are meeting for an emergency NATO summit.
Welcome to AJC Global Forum.
We need AJC now more than ever.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
Please welcome AJC President Harriet P. Schleifer.
So good afternoon, and welcome to AJC Global Forum 2022. It's hard to believe that it's been 3 years since we last gathered together in person in Washington, D.C. To say so much has happened would be an understatement. The world as we know it has dramatically changed due to COVID-19, and the challenges before us here at home and on the world stage are profound. Which is why it's so special to see all of us here today, happily reuniting and eagerly recommitting to the critical advocacy work of AJC's global agenda. We're joined by AJC advocates from scores of countries around the world and from our 24 regional offices across the United States who connect the local to the global every day. This is a global forum like no other. We're gathered in New York at the historic and beautiful Congregation Emmanuel of the City of New York. The ties between AJC and Temple Emmanuel are deep and historic, and we're so honored to be here. We come together during a seminal moment in the life of AJC, and as the world is reeling from too many crises. Over the course of the next 48 hours, we'll dive into the conversations of greatest importance to the global Jewish community, learn from leading experts, advocate with foreign diplomats, hear from AJC's incoming CEO, and pay tribute to AJC CEO David Harris, our visionary leader who has dedicated his life to advancing Jewish interests worldwide. Thank you to everyone in this room and to the hundreds, if not thousands, of you watching online for your continued support and engagement with us. We all have a critical role to play, and as we work to shape the world through AJC and stand up in defense of the values we hold dear. To begin our program, we're delighted to be joined this afternoon, by 4 distinguished guests and friends of AJC who embody the special nature of our program being in New York. Governor Kathy Hochul, Mayor Eric Adams, Ambassador Asaf Zamir, Consul General of Israel in New York, and Rabbi Joshua Davidson, Senior Rabbinic Chair here at Temple Emmanuel and a former Chappaqua-ian. I have to take credit. Thank you for all of you. Thank you for your presence here, and we look forward to hearing from you. Our first speaker, Governor Hochul, is no stranger to AJC or our issues. She's been outspoken on the need to combat anti-Semitism and protect American Jews. She encouraged passage of a Holocaust education bill in the New York State Assembly and has been a stalwart friend of Israel, advocating for increased ties between New York State and the State of Israel. Last month, our 3 New York-based regional offices, AJC New York, Long Island, and Westchester Fairfield, briefed over 40 legislators in Albany on AJC's state of anti-Semitism in America and met with members of the governor's policy and education teams to discuss anti-Semitism and Holocaust education. Governor Hochul, thank you for your friendship and partnership, and it's our pleasure to welcome you on the AJC Global Forum stage. So nice to meet you again.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Harriet, for your leadership. Our paths have crossed many times, and I know the depth of your passion for the work of AJC. I also do want to acknowledge the extraordinary years of service, literally 3 decades, of David Harris, who is so caring and so understanding of the challenges that we still face, and his legacy will be remembered for many, many years to come. Very proud to have my friend, the Consul General of Israel here. We've met many times. Consul General Ambassador Zamir, I want to thank you for meeting me in my office, meeting me at the Celebrate Israel Parade, and literally every week I feel like we're connecting. But that's important because you're such an important part of our connection to Israel. And of course, our host here, Senior Rabbi of Temple Emmanuel, Rabbi Joshua Davidson, thank you very much. And I know you'll be hearing from many speakers. I had a chance to take a look at your agenda. It's ambitious, it's bold, it's sort of like what we do like to do here in the state of New York. Think very big and have people tell you it can't be done, and then you do it. And I'm putting the weight of responsibility on your shoulders this evening to help us in government break through where we've not been successful before, to help understand how we can partner even more closely to not just espouse, but actually act upon our shared values, our understanding of the unique relationship between Israel and the state of New York, something of which we're very proud, but also how we stem the specter of hate and its rise in our society today. So I put that on you. At the end of 48 hours, I'm going to get a phone call from somebody who's going to say, we figured it out. Because I'm looking for that very much. But, you think about a world free of hate. It sounds ambitious. But if we don't talk about that as the reality we want, not just for our children, but also our grandchildren, I say that as a brand new grandmother, so I'm now worried about the next generation. But where else should those conversations occur than right here in New York State? The largest Jewish population outside of Israel. We are so proud of this. This is part of our identity. It's part of our diversity. It's part of what just makes us so downright fascinating. And we have to make sure that people here are safe, though. And I will submit that the Jewish experience in this country is not what people had hoped it would be by the time we reach 2022. That saddens me. But it also challenges me as the governor of the state of New York, responsible for the safety of the greatest number of people, Jewish people from around the world. They concentrate here in the state of New York, and I have a moral responsibility to protect them. And that is something I take so seriously. Jews have been part of our history since the 1600s, a vibrant part of our identity. And as I marched in the parade just a couple weeks ago and honored the 74th proud years of Israel's fascinating story, a story that gives hope to so many, I had a chance to reflect on what it really meant. But I didn't have to think very long, because all I had to do was look out along the streets that were jam-packed with people waving the flag, celebrating their identity and saying, yes, this is the place we want to continue to thrive. And I reinforced some of our values, and one of them, one of my very first acts as governor, I've only been a governor about 9 months. It's all right. It's great. It's an interesting. But I came out and made a very clear statement in the infancy of my administration. I said BDS is wrong. I said that it is a targeted attack. That aims to punish and cause economic harm to Israel. So I very quickly, and I had a lot of other things on my plate as well, but I knew this was important. It was an important statement. And I directed all of my state agencies, in fact, I prohibited state agencies and authorities from investing in entities, and this is another way to get at it, from investing in entities that participate in BDS activities. We got that done here in the state of New York very early. And I also said, what else can we do? What else can we do? I'm proud to announce that I've issued a proclamation stating that the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism here in the state of New York is important and will help facilitate constructive discourse and understanding as we continue to stand in solidarity with the Jewish community and send a clear message throughout the world of our support for the Jewish people. We just issued that proclamation. It's hard to have to focus on the negative, but you have to call out a problem before you can solve it. And to know that there have been over 660 incidences of anti-Semitism in 2021 alone, and they're still on the rise. As a human being, it hurts because I have always said an attack on one is an attack on all of us, and there are 20 million of us. So attacking one individual, you're picking a fight with 20 million New Yorkers. Do you really want to do that? Well, those who do will find there are consequences. There are consequences. And that is what we have to continue to do. I also want to say, to increase awareness and understanding of discrimination and contemporary style of discrimination. And I mention this because I had the fascinating opportunity to speak to 10 women, all about the ages of 75 to about 95. What they shared in common is that they're all Holocaust survivors. And I sat down with them and we talked, and they told me their different stories about having their childhood robbed from them, that they grew up very different people because they didn't know innocence and love at an early age. But they also demonstrated and taught me the power of resilience and the testament to the human spirit that these women still gathered all these decades later to have that sense of camaraderie. And I said, we're going to continue funding programs to help these individuals because it also was heartbreaking to learn that 40% of the Holocaust survivors living in this city were living in poverty. I said that is a disgrace. But one thing that I heard from one of them, the women, she says she's frightened because she's starting to see the signs today in our society of what she knew about as a child living in Europe before Hitler committed his crimes against humanity. And I said, we need to pay attention to this. We have to realize that the slope can start kind of slippery, and all of a sudden it's spiraling. And that is what we as an enlightened people, as we say, never forget what that really means. This woman was warning us of what that means and what her fears are today. So I'm going to continue focusing on protecting individuals, whether it's the simple act of walking down a street, riding a subway. And I remember visiting a yeshiva not that long ago, and there had just been an attack on two gentlemen walking down the street in Brooklyn, wearing yarmulkes, and they were attacked. And this 12, 13-year-old young man said to me, he goes, my friends tell me I shouldn't wear this any longer. They tell me I'll be safer if I don't wear it. Governor, what do you say to that, he asked me. I said, no, you wear that. You wear that proudly because people that came before you fought and sacrificed through centuries of time to pass on to you the honored traditions that you revere and display by wearing that yarmulke. And I will do everything I can to protect you. We have allocated more money for the protections of synagogues and yeshivas. But I thought of that young man, and I'll never get his worry out of my head as I think about other ways we can fight to protect. So I want him to know that we will not bow to hatred. He should not bow to hatred. He should stand up tall and proud. I also think about a verse from the Ethics of the Fathers. It says, it is not your duty to finish the work, but neither are you at liberty to neglect it. People in positions of power and elective office, from governors down to local, and in Washington for sure, You cannot neglect it. And so I talk about my responsibility, holding people accountable, supporting victims of these despicable acts, as I mentioned, investing money. But the pain comes from two sources. We know this. White supremacy, yes, it is flourishing on social media. I come out of very humble beginnings as an Irish Catholic in Buffalo, New York, grandchild of very impoverished immigrants who came here like all of your families, ancestors, in search of that American dream. And that dream in my fair city, 10 minutes from where I live, was shattered when an 18-year-old who could legally get his hand on an AR-15 living in rural New York was so radicalized by the messages that he could stream into his home every single day, especially during COVID. There wasn't much else going on. And he became radicalized, became a disciple of this hate speech. And he determined that he believed in the replacement theory, which we heard chanted in the streets of Charlottesville. He acted upon that against members of the African American community. He said he was going to find the blackest community he could find, the highest black population within a drive of his home. He had to drive over 3 hours to Buffalo to commit that atrocity. My question is, how do social media platforms allow this to continue? I'm a lawyer. I know about the federal law that protects them, gives them immunity. But isn't enough enough? Isn't it time we stand up and say no more? How much longer do we have to say it's okay to spread hatred and anti-Semitism and white supremacy on social media networks so people can literally emulate and rewrite manifestos that are written, as happened in this case as he parroted the language from the Christ King massacre a number of years ago? In places like Tree of Life Synagogue, I gathered with so many people in the aftermath and the one-year anniversary to talk about the excruciating pain we felt as a people. So vulnerable. There's nothing worse than feeling vulnerable. And there are also people in communities here in New York, not necessarily radicalized in the views of white supremacy, but other communities also need to continue to stand up and call it out. And I believe it comes into education. I believe in Holocaust education because there are people out there still denying to this day, as crazy as that sounds. You know this. We can all go to places and learn the culture and the history, but what about the children in communities where their parents aren't taking them to those places? How are they supposed to learn the true story? That's what those of us in government have a responsibility to do as well. That is my commitment. But on the white supremacy side and the domestic terrorism, we're doing what we can. But I'm asking you for answers before you leave here. Let me pose one question. None of this is in the beautiful notes my staff wrote. I don't really follow a script at all. If you're governor of the state of New York, what would you do? What would you do? Bring me your best ideas. Tell me what we need to do here in the state of New York so the Jewish community knows that they should be able to thrive and be successful and welcome others without fear, because fear is paralyzing. And I have no tolerance for anyone who creates fear in another person. And I was taught in my social justice Catholic household, what you do for the least of my brothers, you do unto me. And that's how I conduct my life as a public servant. That's how I know all of you who care enough to be here today. You're not doing this for yourselves, you're doing it for the next generation. That's the beauty of the Jewish community. It's always about education and those who come afterward. I admire that. I wish other communities thought the same way and had that sense of responsibility to the future as you do. But bring me your answers. Tell me what you think we should be doing, what we're missing as we try to change the world, because that's what this is all about, isn't it? Changing the world and making it a better place when we leave it than when we found it. Thank you, AJC, for your commitment to this cause. I am there with you. Thank you.
Please welcome Rabbi Joshua M. Davidson, the Peter and Mary Calico Senior Rabbinic Chair for Congregation Emmanuel of the City of New York.
Thank you, Governor. You honor us by your presence, and we are so grateful for your moral clarity and your leadership on these issues that lie at the core of our mission. Dear friends, on behalf of the leadership of Temple Emmanuel and its president, Harris Diamond, it is my great privilege to greet you. I do want to thank a few of our staff members in particular, Mark Heitlinger, Jesus Toribio, and Rodney Rogers. Daily, Emmanuel percolates to overflowing with activity. But when I said to them, I hoped for us to find a way to host this year's Global Forum, they said, we'll make it work. In welcoming you to our synagogue, I want to recall briefly a bit of the history Emmanuel and the American Jewish Committee share, and reflect briefly on two individuals, each of whom has been called rightly American Jewry's preeminent spokesman. The first was Louis Marshall, who served as president of Temple Emmanuel from 1916 until his death in 1929. It was Marshall who shepherded the congregation from its prior home on 43rd Street to our current one on 65th and 66th Streets. So welcome to the house that Louis built. But of course, Marshall's communal leadership didn't begin here. All the years he led Emmanuel as president, he presided over the American Jewish Committee, which he helped found with other prominent Emmanuel members. Universally recognized for his wisdom in matters constitutional and governmental, domestic and international, Marshall served as a delegate to the Paris Peace Conference, where he crusaded for Jewish rights in Eastern Europe. Here at home, he fought vigorously against anti-Semitism, whether it manifested in university quotas or the Dearborn Independent. And he championed the liberties of other minorities as well, African Americans and newer immigrant populations, understanding the importance of building bridges to benefit all Americans. And though not a political Zionist, Marshall's leadership was instrumental in the establishment of the Jewish Agency, cementing in the minds of even non-Zionists the necessity of a Jewish homeland. For all these reasons and more, Marshall was called in his day the foremost leader of American Judaism, and Temple Emmanuel is as proud to lay claim to his legacy as I know the American Jewish Committee is. That is history we share. Certainly, there are precious few leaders cut from such cloth as Louis Marshall. But during the course of our days together, we will be blessed with the opportunity to pay tribute to one. For more than 30 years now, David Harris has led the American Jewish Committee. Like Marshall before him, David, too, is sought out for his wisdom by governmental leaders and diplomats at home and abroad. Like Marshall, he, too, fights tirelessly for the security of Jews in this country and around the globe. Like Marshall, he, too, recognizes the necessity of building bridges to other faith and ethnic communities for our mutual benefit and the benefit of our shared vision of a world where every people of every origin in every corner of the globe can live in dignity and in peace. And of course, David's defense of the legitimacy and necessity of the State of Israel is as eloquent as it is constant. Truly, I treasure my friendship with David Harris, which is as personal as it is professional. Of the professional, I will say simply this. When we as American rabbis need our compass tuned, David has been our true north. When we wonder what should matter at any given moment to the Jewish community, his perspective is what we seek. And when we want to cut through all the clatter and hubbub and competing claims of what it means to be a supporter of Israel and the Jewish people, his insights pinpoint our focus. So when David called me months ago asking whether Temple Emmanuel would be willing to host this year's Global Forum, no request could have brought me greater pride or happiness. Thank you, David. And again, to you all, my warmest welcome.
Please welcome AJC Board of Governors Chair Anthony E. Meyer.
Good afternoon. Nice to see many of you again. I have the honor today of introducing the Honorable Eric Adams, Mayor of New York City. As this is the first time AJC's Global Forum has taken place in New York since 1991, we're especially delighted to have the mayor with us today. Mayor Adams has been a longtime friend of the Jewish people, Israel, and AJC, having participated in an AJC Project Interchange delegation to Israel for state officials in 2011. Through AJC New York, we have stayed in close touch ever since, and we attach great importance to our relationship with him. Mr. Mayor, we know that you value your partnership with the Jewish community and have been very outspoken on the need to counter rising anti-Semitism in New York City. We count on your leadership as our city faces an unprecedented rise in hate crimes against Jews and other minority groups. Without further ado, Mayor Eric Adams.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you today in my brevity. Just want to really touch on just what I believe we're facing right now in this amazing country we call America. I was a former Brooklyn Borough president, and we like to consider Brooklyn to be the Tel Aviv of America. And as you know, New York City has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel. So your concerns are all of our concerns. We're at an interesting place in America. Two individual groups that don't realize that they are assisting each other. The far, far left and the far, far right. It appears as though that they are apart, but they have created this environment for the majority of Americans that are moderate and living within the normalities of what's great about this country. On one hand, you have the far, far left stating that whoever commits an act, anti-Semitism, or discharge a weapon should not be held accountable at all. And the far, far right is promoting some of the hatred that we are seeing every day and asking that we give guns to everyone in the city or country. Two different groups creating what I call the turmoil that we are experiencing. But I really believe in all my heart in the words of Archbishop Desmond Tutu. We spend a lifetime pulling people out of the river, but no one goes upstream and prevent them from falling in the first place. We are pulling people out of the river of being anti-Semitic. And I have a different idea. Let's go upstream. Let's prevent them from falling in the river. What does that look like? It looks like Project Interchange, taking young people from all over the country to visit Israel, interact, and understand the history of the country. But even those who cannot take that flight, let's do what we did in Borough Hall with breaking bread, building bonds. 100 dinners across the city, 10 people at each dinner. No two groups came from the same cultural or ethnic background, and they did something revolutionary. they had to talk to each other. We don't appreciate the lubricating value of having a meal and sitting down and engaging in conversation. How about 1,000 dinners across our city with 10 people at each dinner, doing it in restaurants, at our homes, in the backyards, in the parks, and turning them into ambassadors of how we live together and celebrate the most important weapon we have, and that is our diversity. How about allowing us to be proactive and intentional about standing out and going outside our discomfort zone? It is amazing how diverse this city is, and we're one of the most segregated places on the globe. We live in our own silos, and our children are not engaged. So what does that look like? What David Banks and I, the chancellor, are going to do in our schools. Encourage our young people to cross-pollinate and have real-life educational programs that shows you how to go into communities and learn from each other. School cannot be the sterilized environment of a school building. If you live in Brownsville, how about going into Borough Park and learning about the culture that's there, or Flatbush, or Williamsburg? If you live in the South Bronx, how about going into Sunset Park and learning from our very rich Latino community? It's about tearing down those barriers. By the time someone draws a swastika, by the time someone attacks someone because of how they're dressed, or where a synagogue is located, or destroy a statue in a Catholic church, or go and disregard a Buddhist temple, by the time that violence happens, we already failed. We're already pulling them out of the river. And I say, let's take our city upstream. And if we do it right in New York, it would cascade throughout this entire country. And there would be a different conversation in what we're hearing now from the two extreme ends of our country. That's what I believe. And I'm going to fortify that as the mayor. Yes, we're going to do the law enforcement part. That's a downstream, what we have to do. We're going to make sure those who carry out hate crimes are arrested. We're going to ask the district attorneys and the prosecutors to have a no plea bargaining agreement for those who carry out hate crimes. Yes, we look at the numbers and notice that we're having a decrease in some areas, but a decrease is not enough. We must not alleviate hate, we must eradicate hate. That's the focus that we're going to have. And so my promise to you, as the mayor of this amazing city, spent 22 years of my life wearing a bulletproof vest, standing on street corners, protecting the children and families of the city. I'm going to continue to do that. And as I depart, I have one ask of you. Let's support our police. Let's support our police. Let's not do it quietly. Let's have billboards, full-page ads, radio announcement, PSAs, leaflets, in our journals. Let's send a clear message that the prerequisite to our prosperity is public safety and justice. As we cycle out of COVID, 100,000 new jobs, 95% of our hotels at the pre-pandemic level, business travelers are returning. We went from stable to optimistic in our financial future. As we cycle out of COVID, let's do it with the support of those men and women who are watering the tree of freedom with their blood, that we sit under that shade from the hot rays of criminology. Let's support them in a real way. And I'm here to continue to be your partners. Project Interchange changed me, and I think it could change others as we move forward and fight to end anti-Semitism and hate in our city and in our country. Thank you very much.
Please Please welcome the Consul General of Israel in New York, Ambassador Asaf Zamir.
Good evening, everyone. If I could choose any person in this room that I'd rather not follow, it would be Mayor Eric Adams. It happens every time. I've asked a number of times to put someone less charismatic between us, and it's very hard. So wish me luck. I'm very, very excited to be here, and I'm very honored that in my first year as Consul General, the AJC holds this global forum here in New York City, giving me the opportunity to address you all. I just came from New Jersey, where I greeted about 40 18-year-old Americans that chose to make Aliyah this year to Israel. And they deserve it. They deserve it. A few months after the beginning of my posting, I called my predecessors, and I told them that I inherited a much harder New York and America in regards to the relationship between the United States and Israel, and regarding the relationship between Israelis and American Jewry. I grew up in Florida in the 80s, and I remember Israel was a consensus. I also remember virtually all Jews felt Israel was equally theirs. I was saddened to encounter the reality of today. I was shocked to see the number of anti-Semitic incidents in this city and state. They've quadrupled in the last year. And growing up, I remember anti-Semitism from the far, far fringe right as something we lived with, and everyone called it for what it was. But there's a new form, and it doesn't exist only in the right, it exists in the left as well. And it's normalized, and it's much smarter, and it's much harder to advocate against. But I meet these 18-year-old children, young adults, that go to college on campuses, that wear Stars of David or a yarmulke, that have family in Israel, and that are being told today for the first time that if they believe in the eternal right of the Jewish people to set their home in Israel, they're racist. That's what they're told. They're told if they want to be part of a group that advocates for certain values, they have to leave parts of their Jewish identity at the door. All of their Israeli connection at the door. And if this younger generation is to be the next generation or the future of the backbone of the relationship between Israel and the United States, the future activists and lobbyists and philanthropists and organizers, this group doesn't grow up with a strong sense of belief in the core values and the shared interest that American Jewry and Israelis have, and that the United States and that Israel have, we are going to be in a big problem. Now, coming from Israel, we don't understand America that well. We don't understand American Jewry that well, and we don't have such a thing as organized Jewish life. Our organized Jewish life is the state. We organize, our Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a ministry. It's not AJC. So we don't have organizations built to the extent that you do, and it amazes me what fine, amazing, important, contributing work these organizations do. And I wish, and this maybe will be my future role, I wish everyone in Israel understood the importance of the contribution American Jewry has to the stability of Israel. And I wish all Jews in the future will feel that Israel is equally theirs, and that they'll share the same belief of the importance of its existence. And I know that all the people in this room dedicate a very, very large part of their lives to make that happen. So it's an honor for me to be here to say thank you in the name of Israel to all of you. Especially, I want to thank David Harris. After 32 years of service and a role model for all of us, I want to thank Harriet Schleifer that has led this organization for the last few years. I want to congratulate Ted Deutsch and wish him luck. You're going to need it. You have a lot of work. It's not becoming easier at all. At all. And it makes me very happy that I stood behind here and listened to Governor Hochul's speech and to hear her address her commitment to the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism and to the understanding that we cannot allow as Jewish people this separation between saying Zionism is racism, but that's not anti-Semitic. If we allow that to be normalized, we're going to be in a big problem. We're going to be in trouble. And she is a good friend in helping us do that. And Mayor Eric Adams is a very good friend to the state of Israel. And we have a lot of good friends here. And we have a lot of supporters, both in the Jewish community and outside. But we still need to make that circle of partners larger. And you do tremendous work in that, not just here, but all over the world. In the advancement of the Abraham Accords, on the Russian-Ukrainian border, and any place in the world where the face of the Jews needs to be represented, you all represent us in a beautiful way. So thank you very, very much. It's a great, great honor to be here, and good luck.
That's what it was all about, Ukrainian independence, an end to Kremlin control and communist ways.
The United States also recognizes the independence of Ukraine. We will move quickly to establish diplomatic relations and build new ties to them.
Tonight, the U.S. believes a full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine could be imminent.
And I'm standing in Kiev, in Ukraine.
Hello, I'm in Kiev, Ukraine. Behind me is a house that was hit by one of the Russian missiles a couple of days ago. I still can't imagine that this isn't all a nightmare.
Glory and freedom have not yet died in Ukraine, nor will they.
AJC, as you have rightly mentioned, has established the Stand With Ukraine Fund, and so far we've raised $1.7 million.
Wow.
2 a.m. here in Ben Gurion Airport. Behind me is an aircraft just landed from Budapest. We are here, the entire AJC team from Jerusalem, waiting to welcome the new 141 immigrants that came from Ukraine. We're very proud to take part in this kind of amazing humanitarian initiative.
I'm standing in a place called Dorohusk. About 100 yards to my left is the border between Poland and Ukraine. To try and capture the emotion here is almost impossible. These are people who are largely stunned. One moment they were living in their homes in Ukraine, and the next moment they're here in Poland, beginning an uncertain new life. This is what Russia has done in the year 2022.
As you can see behind me, they're collecting clothing, blankets, diapers, food, water, children's toys. This site is completely run by volunteers. These are Polish citizens. They've been here day and night volunteering, receiving refugees, and making sure everyone has what they need.
It's a huge movement of people of goodwill who want to help those who are running from a country run over by an invader.
Thank you, Polish people, for telling all of us, showing all of us what it means to understand that we are all created in God's image.
And now, a very special moment in the history of AJC, a courageous and embattled world leader speaks to us from the front line, the President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky.
Пані та панове, друзі, пане Девіде Харріс, щоранку я отримую декілька інформаційних довідок щодо ситуації на передовій, щодо російських ракетних ударів по Україні, по наших людях, і щодо кількості жертв бойових дій за минулу добу. Сьогодні, коли я записую це звернення, суттєво змінилась довідка щодо загиблих. Перелік убитих наших діточок став довше одразу на 24 прізвища, і тепер у ньому 287 пунктів. І це, мабуть, одна з найстрашніших речей, які відбуваються у час війни. Російські військові окупанти, вони вбили частину нашої країни. Ми не маємо повної інформації про те, що відбувається у окупованих районах. Ми не знаємо усього про вбивства та інші злочини, які вони там скоюють на окупованій частині України. Що вони зробили з нашими людьми? Ми не знаємо, скільки тіл окупанти закопали у братніх могилах або залишили в руїнах розбитих міст. Але поступово ми дізнаємося про це. І саме так список убитих дітей став довшим одразу на 24 пункти. І це діти, які загинули від російських ударів по Маріуполю. Тепер ми про них знаємо. Серед цих 24 дітей хлопчик Максим. Він народився цьогоріч. Дівчинка Дар'я, вона теж народилася цього року. Максим і Дар'я не прожили і 3 місяців. Вони загинули разом з батьками, коли їх усіх засипало в підвалі звичайного житлового будинку, на який російський літак скинув бомбу. Скажіть мені, чому це відбувається у 22-му році? Це ж не 1940-ві роки. Як могли стати реальністю масові вбивства, катування, спалені міста, фільтраційні табори, які російські військові влаштували на окупованій території, які нагадують концентраційні табори нацистів. Нацистів. І при цьому Росія сподівається, що вона не буде відповідати реально за все це зло, за усі ці варварські удари по житловим будинкам, по лікарням, по церквам. Росії все ще вистачає могутності, щоб сподіватись продовжувати війну проти України, проти людей, продовжувати ігнорувати реакцію світу. Пані та панове, я знаю, що ви допомагаєте нашій державі дуже серйозно, але я прошу вас ще подвоїти зусилля, щоб зупинити російську ненависть до людства. Так само ненависть є тією рушійною силою, завдяки якій ще продовжується ця російська війна проти України і проти свободи в Європі, у світі. Ненависть до українського, до культури української, до історії України, до того, що попри всі жахи, які були у минулому, Україна залишилась доброю, відкритою країною для різних культур. Різноманіття – це важлива характеристика України. Що залишиться від цієї відкритості? Скажіть мені, від цього мирного співжиття різних народів. Російські снаряди спалюють в Україні навіть російські ж церкви. Російська армія знищувала громади, в яких століттями проживала грецька спільнота. Кримські татари на окупованому півострові зазнають репресій. Найбільше. Російські ракети били по Бабиному Яру у Києві. Російська артилерія пошкодила Минору у Дрогобицькому Яру, поблизу Харкова. Відверто антисемітські висловлювання міністра закордонних справ Росії спричинили скандал світового рівня. Цього мало. Але зараз дійсно не 1940-ві. Тому захищаєте необхідність посилення санкцій проти Росії. Це вам по силах, допомагайте нам прискорити постачання зброї для України, щоб ми могли звільнити окуповані райони. Нам потрібна потужна наступальна зброя, без якої війна лише затягується і жертви збільшуються. Я знаю, що ваша допомога вже суттєва, але ви можете використати ще більше свого впливу, бо ми зараз маємо історичну можливість захистити нашу спільну свободу, нашу спільну безпеку, наше спільне культурне різноманіття від найбільшої хвилі ненависті з усіх, які загрожували світу останніми десятиліттями. Тож закінчимо цю війну, переможемо російську ненависть в ім'я дітей, які були убиті ударами російської армії, і заради майбутнього мільйонів дітей в Україні і в різних країнах Європи, які заслуговують на те, щоб жити в безпеці, жити в мирі, просто жити. Дякую за підтримку. Слава Україні!
President Zelensky's last words, those last two words, what were they? Louder. Slava Ukraini. Glory to Ukraine. And what's the response? Geroyam Slava. Glory to the heroes. This was not an easy video to arrange. It took many months of very quiet conversation. We didn't know, in fact, until this morning whether or not we would actually receive it. The fact that President Zelensky, in the middle of a war, took the time between urgent phone calls with President Biden and Chancellor Scholz and President Macron and Secretary General Guterres and so many others, urging weapons, urging pressure on Russia, that he took the time to prepare this video for us, AJC, says a lot. He is, after all, if you will, the Winston Churchill of our era. And imagine for just a moment Winston Churchill taking the time in the 1940s to record a film for the American Jewish Committee Global Forum. That's the importance he attaches to us, to you, to this organization. And we dare not let him down. President Putin explained this war as an attempt to denazify Ukraine. Think about that for a moment. Volodymyr Zelensky had a grandfather and 3 brothers of the grandfather. 3 of them were killed in Babi Yar. Only his grandfather survived. He is a democratically elected president of Ukraine who is also proudly Jewish. What exactly needs to be denazified about Ukraine? There is a need for denazification today, ladies and gentlemen. It's in Moscow, not in Kiev. It was Moscow that engaged in what? A blitzkrieg? It was Moscow that illegally, brazenly, recklessly, barbarically invaded a sovereign country. It was Moscow that violated solemn agreements, including the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, which guaranteed Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity in exchange for relinquishing the world's 3rd largest nuclear arsenal. It was Moscow that unleashed barbaric war crimes against innocent civilians, including the children the president spoke about. And it was Moscow that has driven millions of people away from Ukraine, including those that we have seen in Poland, not to mention the other frontline states. It's Moscow that needs denazification. And it's up to us. And why is it up to us? Not only because we were the first Jewish organization going back to 1991, the only Jewish organization to stand with Ukraine in the rebirth of its independence. Not only because in 2014 we were the only Jewish organization in the world to call on President Obama to provide weapons to Ukraine at a time when the White House was unwilling to do so, but also because today the stakes for the future of our world hang in the balance in the outcome of this conflict. Let's not minimize this, but let's also be aware that with each passing day, there is likely to be greater national and global fatigue as the war grinds on and attention is diverted elsewhere. And people say, well, why doesn't Ukraine already concede or negotiate or acknowledge that its territory has been stolen? That's happening before our eyes. We're already hearing some well-known international figures essentially asking Ukraine to acknowledge a changed status quo and learn to live with it. And if Ukraine does, what's next? More of Ukraine? Moldova? Taiwan? What's next? Because it isn't over. And one of the key links that we have had to Ukraine from 1991 forward has been the rebirth of its remarkable Jewish community. And I'm particularly thrilled today that with us here in this auditorium is the chair of the Jewish Confederation of Ukraine, the umbrella body for the 300,000 Ukrainian Jews, Mr. Boris Loshkin.
And we have other members of the Jewish community of Ukraine with us. And we have that honorary member of the Jewish community as well, Sam Klieger, who in 2014, at our request, left his family behind in New York, moved to Kiev to represent us during the Maidan Revolution, who spent 5 months there as the only such representative of any NGO in the world. Sam, thank you. So there's no better way to conclude than for all of us, if I could ask you to stand. And together, what are we going to say? Slava Ukraini! Slava Ukraini! Героям слава! Героям слава! To Ukraine's victory.
Please welcome AJC Executive Council member and incoming AJC President, Michael L. Tichnor.
Good afternoon. Anti-Semitism is often called the world's oldest hatred. It has been a fact of life for so many generations of Jews. But after the Holocaust, the establishment of the State of Israel, and Jews flourishing in places like the United States, it seemed that anti-Semitism had truly been pushed to the fringes. For decades, it felt like we had won. But now it seems that every week, sometimes every day, there is news of another act of vandalism, a Jewish person harassed or beaten, another institution turning a blind eye to Jew hatred, and the far right, the extreme left, religious radicals, and others continue to demonstrate the many forms of anti-Semitism that are permeating society. And Jews are worried. AJC's own research bears this out. Last year, nearly 1/3 of Jewish survey respondents told AJC they either refrained from wearing items that would identify them as Jewish, avoided attending Jewish events or places, or hesitated when posting content online that might reveal their views on Jewish issues. What a profoundly sad and frightening trend. But as is so often the case in Jewish history, there are those who are standing up, speaking out, and fighting back. Today we'll hear from inspiring Jewish leaders from across the country who refuse to stay silent. To kick us off, I am especially delighted to introduce Natalie Kahn, a student at Harvard University. Last month, Natalie did something extraordinarily brave at Harvard. She stood up for Israel and against anti-Semitism. I know you'll be inspired by her story. We will then be joined by Jacob Kornbluh, Senior Political Reporter for The Forward, April Powers, Managing Director for DEI Strategy for First Impression RX, and Andrew Rehfeld, President of Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion, who will discuss their firsthand experiences with anti-Semitism in the United States. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Natalie Kahn.
Sorry, a little short. On April 29th, the Harvard Crimson's editorial board capped off the semester with a staff editorial endorsing the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions, BDS, movement. Even as president of Harvard's Hillel, my initial response was to try and downplay the magnitude of this endorsement. After all, as an associate news editor for the Crimson, I know the editorial board is only a small group of students on campus, and one that's not necessarily representative of the student body as a whole. I felt the best solution was to not make too big a deal of it. But in the hours and days that followed, I received dozens of messages about how everyone was up in arms, everyone was so upset, how alumni were mobilizing to write a letter. What can we do to stop them? How can Harvard allow this to happen? Harvard University should condemn the Crimson. were all messages that I received. As a news editor, I can almost never write editorials, but the many messages and the perception that everyone affiliated with the Crimson, myself included, was endorsing BDS, led me to seek special permission to respond with my own editorial, which I titled, "I am a Crimson editor and I stand with Israel." After my response was published, I received countless media inquiries. The Forward, the Times of Israel, Jerusalem Post, Fox News, Washington Post, and Al Jazeera would all go on to reference the Crimson's editorial board's endorsement, whether through news coverage of their own or their own editorials. And many of these outlets reached out to me about my response. Even Omar Barghouti, co-founder of BDS Movement, felt compelled to respond to my piece, calling me out in a letter published in the Crimson on Thursday for, quote, whitewashing Israel's apartheid regime, end quote. Harvard students are generally given a lot of attention. They love the spotlight, you know. And they love when people view them as arbiters of right and wrong. The talking point often goes, if he said it and he went to Harvard, it must be so. So, if the Crimson endorses BDS, they must have the moral authority to do so, right? Exactly wrong. Rather, the rippling public outcry as a result of the Crimson's editorial is indicative of our exact challenge in fighting the battle against anti-Israel forces on campus today. We let a small group of very loud students control the narrative when it comes to discourse about Israel. By being loud and bold, they monopolize the spotlight. Other BDS supporting anti-Israel groups on campus are just as scrappy, willing to play dirty. The wall built by anti-Israel groups at Harvard for the annual Israel Apartheid Week, which in true courtesy took place during Passover this year, is the definition of screaming in the spotlight. Placed in Harvard Yard, always overrun with tourists, the wall was covered with false and vitriolic statements such as Zionism is racism, settler colonialism, white supremacy, apartheid, painted in bright red so as to resemble blood. I'll admit, my editorial was a bit in your face. I meant for it to come off as dramatic, like a good Harvard student. I didn't want it to be a quiet, conciliatory piece. I wanted to return their audacity with my own. But this is because Israel advocates are always so focused on playing nice, on fighting fire with water and not fire. We're always apologizing. Some on our side will go so far as to say things like, Israel's in the wrong, I know, or it's a very bad situation. Please don't use the word apartheid. This has to stop. We would never deign to slander Israel's detractors with the equivalent of some of the horrible things they say about us. Most in the pro-Israel community would never paint the words, all Palestinians are terrorists, in bright red across Harvard Yard, because we know it's not true. But our hesitation to delve into some of the sinister intentions of anti-Israel extremists and the willingness of some to resort to apologetics means we're just putting every anti-Israel fire out for a moment, only to face another bigger one for which we are grossly unprepared. It's high time we start operating on the offensive rather than the defensive. The Harvard administration is not going to save us. Although Harvard's President Bacow condemns academic boycotts, he won't explicitly condemn BDS by name, and there is radio silence among the school's other administrators. In a recent survey conducted by the Harvard Crimson, 34% of graduating Harvard students said they support BDS. These results are not because 1/3 of the students polled are deeply anti-Zionists. It's because we are losing the marketing game, and we are letting the loudest voices win while we attempt to play nice and let them walk all over us. We need a new strategy, one that will forge a generation of pro-Israel students that is not reactive, but proactive. We have to be just as motivated by activism and passion as our opponents. We let the cancel culture mob ally itself with BDS supporters, and now activists have channeled their fervor to the wrong side. The best pro-Israel students on campus can ask for right now is a speaker or an event that stirs the pot, albeit with better substance than the events of the other side. But the hurdles always seem to be so great, people are afraid to go big, go loud, and create controversy. The saying goes, go big or go home. But in our case, we have to go big, or else, to put it bluntly, we will have no home to go to. This work is complex and exhausting. There are countless student leaders across the US and around the world who are ready and anxious to step up. But we need your support. We count on the continued vital support of AJC, the 1,000+ here of you in this room today and watching from home, other like-minded organizations, and the millions of pro-Israel supporters around the globe. We can reclaim the narrative, but it won't be achieved by op-eds in student newspapers alone. We need the support of public pro-Israel voices like yours who can make their voices heard on campus and take back the spotlight from groups like the Crimson's editorial board. If we can all unite in this more proactive approach, we can begin to turn the tide on campuses near and far. Now is the time to be bold, decisive, and unrelenting. This is imperative if we want to help the next generation better understand Israel and internalize the central place of Israel in the heart of the Jewish people. Thank you, AJC, for giving me this platform, and to all of you for the work you do day in and day out on behalf of the Jewish people and the state of Israel. I look forward to working alongside you as we work to take back the narrative on our beloved Israel. Thank you.
One in 4 American Jews,
24%,
report that they have been the target of anti-Semitism over the past 12 months.
I showed up at my synagogue, and there was a guy with like swastikas and KKK and SS on his jacket.
I was walking into Mr. Broadway, and then someone bumped into me and said, like, effing Jew.
I'm called the f***ing Jew. F***ing Jew doesn't have a place here.
A Snapchat video showed a girl who was walking down the hallway, and the person behind the camera asked her, "What are we gonna do to Israel?" And she said, "We're gonna bomb Israel, you Jewish pieces of shit."
Especially in the LGBT community, there's so many people who want to demonize my existence for being a Jew, for being in support of Israel, and it wears on you because this is the antithesis of what it means to be progressive.
On the one hand, it makes me angry and scared. And on the other hand, it makes me just want to get out there and be a loud, proud Jew.
Please welcome our panelists, Jacob Kornbluh, April Powers, and Andrew Rehfeld, along with our moderator, AJC U.S. Director for Combating Antisemitism, Holly Huffnagle.
Here, I'll take it. We don't have much time, so I'll just dive right in. We're gathered today seeing a current rise in anti-Semitism, and it's really one that began several years ago. It's become more violent and more open, and there are several reasons for the current rise. But one reason is that anti-Semitism in America today comes from many different sources. And it's really this complexity coming from so many different sides that creates the biggest challenge to combating it. You are all here today because you have very different experiences with anti-Semitism. And I want to begin by really unpacking what you're seeing. Andrew, I'd like to start with you. Today you are the head of the largest religiously liberal Jewish seminary in the nation, and the first non-rabbi to head this prestigious institution, and you're here in New York. But I want to tap into what you saw before you came to Hebrew Union College. You spent 27 years in the Midwest. What was your experience like with anti-Semitism there in Middle America? And what is changing?
Holly, thank you so much, and congratulations to David Harris and the AJC for holding this important event. I think that there are differences in anti-Semitism in the way that hate is expressed, depending in large part by the degree to which haters anonymize or feel connected to the people that they're hating. In the Midwest, more often than not, haters, whether white supremacists or others, don't have personal relationships with Jews. And so you see the targets of their attack much more systematically being institutions that happen to be places where Jews are located, rather than specifics. Think about the names of the cities that track a map of the most horrific anti-Semitic incidents in recent history, whether Colliesville, Texas, whether Pittsburgh, or Overland Park, Kansas. In each of those cases, it was an institution that was targeted for destruction, for the people to be destroyed, not based on how people looked, but based on the institutions that they could define. And so I think that what we're seeing is the need to create those personal relationships, which I know we'll talk about a little later. But I think that the key here is that the anonymity of the victim is critical, and it allows the kind of hate tropes and the tropes of anti-Semitism to percolate and to continue to spread, because you keep this distance between the perpetrator and the victim so far and so distant.
Did you encounter, I'll just stick with you, Andrew, in the Midwest, where would you say the main sources are of anti-Semitism? Is it, the far right, people not know Jews? What was your experience?
I think generally, if you look at the data, it is coming from the far right in the Midwest, in the middle of the country. And again, this is because that is tending to be where Jews live. They tend to live in communities that are more politically liberal, and so people can develop relationships with people that are not as alienated or as isolated on the right for that reason.
And in St. Louis, did you meet people that didn't know Jews at all?
It was ironic. I was the CEO of the Jewish Federation for 7 years. One of your national governors, Bob Newmark, I just want to shout out, is now the chairman of the Jewish Federation of St. Louis. But we were there when the first Jewish governor was elected. So there's this irony that the state could elect someone who is Jewish, but nevertheless people didn't know Jews. They didn't know individuals. So I would have the kind of anti-Semitism that I would call casual anti-Semitism at the personal level. People just didn't know, oh, you're Jewish, how interesting. Well, what's that about? They just don't know. So there's a gap, a significant gap of knowledge.
Thank you, Andrew. April, I'm going to turn to you now. You actively work in progressive spaces, and I think the anti-Semitism that Andrew has experienced, whether it be from the far right, ignorance, maybe some elements of Christian anti-Judaism, that's not at all what you have experienced with your work. And if you could speak to us, what happened to you last June and July following the Hamas-triggered conflict with Israel in May? What happened, and where do you see anti-Semitism in progressive spaces?
Thank you, Holly, and thank you to everyone here at the AJC for all the work that you do. It is so important for the world, really. And I say that as a Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer and somebody who works in this space for large companies. I was the head of equity and inclusion globally for a large nonprofit. And when we posted a statement against anti-Asian hate, I didn't have to go to the board. When I wanted to post a statement against anti-Semitism, I had to go to the board, and one of the board members said, oh, but we have to mention Israel. I said, no, we do not. Jew hate predates Israel. So if it's a problem, I will post. I will make all the statements, and I can walk away if there's a problem, which ended up happening. But when I made the statement, which did not mention Israel, someone attacked the statement in a monomaniacal tirade, starting with, yes, yay for making a statement against white supremacists and Christians. And I said, hate is not just from white supremacists and Christians. And then she said, well, where's the statement for Palestinians and Muslims? And I said, when we see a surge, we'll post something. And that was it. And so she started talking about slaughtering children on a children's book website. So I deleted her. It kept going. I blocked her. I deleted Jews who said similar things. And then I was called a white supremacist Talmudic Jew, see you next Tuesday, expletive, and was told, not by that person, but by somebody else, and the death threats came, the FBI got involved. She posted hashtag Free Palestine, and then it was on, right? Everybody came for me. We need a bat signal, so somebody needs to invent that one. And so for me, I was told, because she went through all my social media posts and found me speaking to an Israeli group saying I was pro-Israel and that I loved India as well, coincidentally, and that I should not be doing the work that I do. And it struck me. I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be here, right? I gained 20 pounds. I checked out. I stopped doing the work that I do. And then I'm back. I'm back because we have to, yeah. I still have 15 to go, but I have clothes to fit into, guys. So it's important for you to know that in progressive spaces, we're being asked to leave, and we are leaving in record numbers because, and we'll talk about that later, but we can't leave. We cannot.
April, if you don't mind, if you just spend 30 more seconds, can you just tell us a little bit about your own identity, your own background, and what that means for this space?
Being called a white supremacist Jew, Talmudic Jew, as a black Jew who speaks fluent Spanish, who's lived in South America and Israel, most of my family is, either Latinx. My grandparents don't have a single white great-grandchild. And we have LGBTQ+, disabled neuroatypicality in my family, which is why I do the work that I do. I am 100% black, I'm 100% Jewish, and my mom is in the audience, fifth row center. And so I made Newsweek 3 times. I was asked to be on The View. This was a big news cycle. It made it international news, and I did receive a lot of wonderful support from my Jewish community, so I want to thank you for that. But yeah, being called a white supremacist for that reason was surprising. Sorry.
Thank you, April. Jacob, you're a reporter. You actively cover issues of anti-Semitism. You're also visibly Jewish, and we know there's a huge uptick right now of anti-Semitic attacks against visible Jews, against the Haredi community in New York. I want to ask you, what are you seeing? What is the source or the sources of anti-Semitism here in New York City? It's not as simple as calling it far right or far left. That's my first question. And my second question is, how is the Haredi community feeling? How is this impacting this community, these attacks?
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to participate in such a great panel of experts on such an important conversation. I think there's a linkage, but also very different. The attacks that happen mostly in New York City, but also not to exclude New Jersey and other states, is there are coordinated attacks where, a person issues a manifesto, buys illegally a rifle and goes into a synagogue to kill Jews, or coordinates it with a different group with an attempt to terrorize an entire country. But there's also it's linked but not as much, is the unprovoked attacks. Those attacks where a person who is identifiably Jewish walking on the street Friday night, going to synagogue and getting attacked, and that person is defenseless. He doesn't carry a gun. He doesn't even have whom to call because it's a Friday night. It's Saturday for him. So they are very different, but it's matched up to an alarming number of such incidents in recent years that you cannot just carry a simple slogan of saying we need to combat anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism as a whole is targeted towards one group of Jews or to one specific ethnic group. They're very targeted attacks that a person who hates Jews specifically, but also who sees an opportunity walking on the street, being able to commit a crime just because it's very simple to just pick up your fist and punch the person and see him helpless or her helpless on the street. So that is something that I see in the various communities, but especially in the Haredi communities in Brooklyn, where they feel that they are not part of the larger conversation of combating anti-Semitism, if it's anti-Semitism on college campuses, if it's anti-Semitism as in terrorism, as in domestic terrorism, but just individual attacks where they can't help themselves but to protect themselves by different measures that we can talk about.
Absolutely, and I think when we talk about the attacks in Muncie or in Jersey City or the attacks in Brooklyn, these aren't white supremacist attacks, and we have to look at where are they coming from, why are they happening? And I want to transition here because I think it's so much easier to talk about the problem, the challenge, and all of your different stories reveal different sources of anti-Semitism. It's actually much more difficult to talk about what's actually working. Where do we need to go? What prescriptions do we have that is going to actually move the needle to combat each of these sources distinctively? And so, April, I want to turn back to you because I think
fighting anti-Semitism in progressive spaces is really where we're going to be in the next 5-10 years. And your personal experience really does reflect a larger and growing problem. There's a lack of understanding about who Jews are, about anti-Semitism as it can relate to Israel. So what do you recommend for us? Where do we need to where do we need to go? What do we need to do in progressive spaces?
I think for anyone who defines themselves as a progressive, I'm going to quote my business partner with Jubian Princess, Kiyomi Kowalski, to say, and hi, Kiyomi, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. The second we leave, it's over. So get back in there. I know it's tough. I was a mess for months, but you've got to get back in there. You've got to encourage your kids to, what would happen if we all put our kippot back on and wore our Stars of David? I rock mine. I have a big hive from my mother-in-law, and it's everywhere. So what if they had to confront the fact that the person that they loved was a Jew? So we got to get back in there, get people to know us. 2, I hate to break this to you. Think 1922 Germany, it's 2022. We're not white. They're never going to think of us as white. So you've got to consider if, white supremacy doesn't think of us as white. We have to we're maybe white adjacent if you're Ashkenazi, but we also have to put Jews of color and marginalized Jews front and center in a lot of the work that you do, because they need to know that we are out here and that we are suffering along with the Jewish people. And I'm already marginalized. I've already been, I've already gone through whatever it is as a brown woman. So you have something for me on Judaism? Bring it, right? Like we've got you. But you also have to embrace the Jews of color, the marginalized Jews, and help us out and make us feel welcome and a part of the solution.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Thank you. Jacob, I want to turn to you for solutions from your vantage point. To date, we haven't seen violence, consistent violence coming at all from the progressive community, but the Hasidic community is facing that consistent violence. And it's coupled with a challenge that we have right now in America. We do studies, Americans don't really know who Jews are, and they also distinguish between non-visible Jews and visible Jews, the Hasidic community, as different entities. So my question for you is, what can be done specifically to counter the anti-Semitism that's being directed toward the visibly Jewish community? And then second, how can we work better together within the Jewish community to fight anti-Semitism?
Well, the second question is part of the answer. I would say it's a combination of 4. The first, the mayor and the governor spoke about it. It's enforcement. If it's adding additional policing, security measures outside institutions, monitoring social media, that's all part of the enforcement. The second is prosecution. If you arrest an individual who's committed a crime, charge them with a hate crime and make sure that they're not let out on bail, or that they actually get, the statistics shows, according to the NYPD, that a large percent of those who are arrested never got charged with a hate crime. The third is education. We need to educate ourselves, obviously the various communities, but also the American public, if it's various faith and ethnic communities, about each other's traditions, about each other's practices. So we know there could be a Jew just wearing a yarmulke and still be considered an observant Jew. You don't need to wear a garb or a Magen David to be considered a Jew. But I think the second question, which is the fourth part, is bridge building. AJC has been doing great work between Black and Jewish communities, but it's also within the Jewish communities. I speak regularly to Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox leaders, and I ask them, why don't we see Orthodox leaders visit Reform synagogues and temples, and Reform leaders visit Orthodox shuls and yeshivas? Let's have a conversation together about this, how we address this issue, but also we can agree on so much of this, these four things that I spoke about, we can agree that you can be progressive but still want security measures for Jewish institutions. You can be progressive but still want a person of hate to be charged with crime. You can be on the far right or Republican but still want to learn about another community, about others. And I think together, if we know that we are all in this together, we are all facing from different points, but we're all facing the same level of hate from these groups, then we can work together. We can really build that bridge that we can sort of combat that and actually see a brighter future for all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. Now, Andrew, in the closing minutes, I want to turn back to you. What should we do in spaces where there aren't many Jews to tackle these challenges? We know from our studies that people who know Jews, they're more likely to know what anti-Semitism is, know that it's rising, know that we need to combat it. So what do we do in spaces where people don't know Jews, where there might be attitudinal or conspiratorial anti-Semitism? And then if you could take what you learned in the Midwest and what you're learning now in New York, are there shared recommendations from these two distinct types of anti-Semitism that you can offer us?
Thank you, Holly. And since he invoked the reform movement, I just have to say absolutely to Jacob that we need to build those bridges. And I so appreciate your leadership on that and saying that. I'm committed to doing it, and just that's our future. So the lessons from the Midwest, I think, are not a whole lot different than for the East. But what we learned in St. Louis and what we do in the Midwest is do the work that AJC has been doing all along. And that is, number one, creating connections between Jewish leadership and civic leadership. Trips to Israel, trips to Washington, trips to our federations and our communities. These build personal relationships with those in the halls of power, in legislatures, in the governor's office, Republican, Democrat, Independent, it doesn't matter. Number two, building interfaith relationships so that religious Christians and Muslims can understand what it means to be Jewish, what it means to be a minority, understand that Jews are not different than them. We are all in the image of God. And number three, let us remember that as a Jewish community in North America and globally in the state of Israel, we are a strong people, a people with great strength that comes from our tradition, our courage, and our resources that we have. And let us lead from strength. And what that means for us at Hebrew Union College, and I think for all of us, and what a powerful speech that Natalie from Harvard just gave a minute ago. We need to lead knowing our values, knowing the strength, and having the courage to allow diverse opinions within our communities flourishing about the very things that we are challenged by, perhaps ourselves. When I began at the Federation 10 years ago, I remember the first arguments I had heard outside of the academy. I was a professor at Washington University in St. Louis. The first arguments I heard outside of the academy were why boycotts against Israel should be banned. Why? Because boycotts, they told me, were anathema to democracy. Well, that's a bad argument, and we should know better. And we should know better because boycotts, whether in Montgomery, Alabama, are key to democratic action. So we need to ask the more sophisticated argument, why is BDS anti-Semitic? And I believe it is, and we fought against it. And the work, again, I want to just praise David Harris and the AJC in leading this. We need to have broader shoulders, wider hallways for conversations, and not alienate our very people, our young people, that want those conversations. Again, I believe we can do it by leading from strength.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, April, and thank you, Jacob. Anti-Semitism is not going to completely go away, but we can push it to the fringes of the society where it belongs, where it's socially unacceptable. And I want to thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability even, your poignant reflections, and your powerful prescriptions of how we can go forward. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
His parents lived next door to an older couple, and the husband started kind of using derogatory slurs.
He kind of just took some kind of strange interest in our family, focused on them and our ethnicity and our background as being Arab American, Arabs, Lebanese.
Dirty Arabs and filthy Lebanese are just some of the insults Vernon Majors allegedly called his neighbors.
My brother-in-law was shot and killed by the neighbor on my in-laws' front porch.
His name is Khalid Jabara.
But last year, a lone white gunman walked into 3 Atlanta Asian-owned or operated spas here in Atlanta, killing 8 people. And 6 of those 8 people were Asian women. And I remember hearing the news that night, being devastated, but not knowing at the time that one of those women was my beloved mother. Experienced devastation, disbelief, and overwhelming sense of grief and anger that my mother was taken away in such a violent and brutal way.
It's a beautiful day in the city of Buffalo. Warm, sunny. Children were out riding their bicycles. I was at the first T-ball game for my great niece and great nephew when I got a call from the police commissioner that there had been a shooting in the city of Buffalo. 13 people had been shot, that 10 were deceased, and that another 3 were injured. We know that this individual, from a manifesto that they wrote, they hated black people, they hated Jewish people, they hated immigrants. So this person was filled with hate for many different types of people.
Breaking news, at least 4 people are believed to be held hostage right now, including a rabbi at a synagogue in Colleyville, Texas.
Muncie, when a man, witnesses say, stormed through the front door and stabbing those celebrating the 7th night of Hanukkah.
Anti-Semitic attacks are rattling the Jewish community in Brooklyn.
Hate crimes have surged, a reminder that there is still a lot of work ahead.
In Tulsa, my niece, she went to a preschool at a synagogue, and they, one thing that they started in my brother's name was the Khalid Jabara Tukum Alom Social Justice Library. It was really targeted at, teaching peace to the youngest minds. Basically started a social justice story hour for their school, and then also opening it up to the community.
The collaboration with others and the partnerships with other groups that are experiencing similar forms of hatred and discrimination is what's likely going to help us solve this social issue.
When a disaster like this strikes, that is when people have to be most positive, when people have to be most united, and when people really have to show their love for one another.
And we have to come together to realize that this is our fight together, and that we'll only win against this as we work together to use our resources, our network, and share our combined experience. And that is why I got involved and participated with AJC, because I saw that in them, and then to again be embraced by another group that has a similar experience allows me to see that, right, I'm not alone.
The truth is that we have this one common goal, and that goal is combating hate. So I think that's why it's so important. Together our voices are so much stronger than they are individually, and we each have different experiences that we can bring to the table.
Thank you, Mayor Byron Brown, Rami and Jenna Jabara, and Robert Peterson for allowing us to stand in solidarity with you in memory of Robert's mother, Yang E.U., Rami and Jenna's brother, Khalid Jabara, and the 10 Buffalo victims who perished. They were murdered in racist hate crimes against an Arab American, African Americans, and Asian Americans. Thousands, including many in our own community, have been victimized in a dramatic escalation of hate in our country. We at AJC, American Jewish Committee, will not be silent. Or passive when our fellow human beings are victimized because of the color of their skin or their religious, ethnic, or gender identities, all created, as we just heard, B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. Nothing less than the future of our society, of our American experiment, is at stake. Mayor, Rami, Jenna, Robert, you deserve more than thoughts and prayers. You, your loved ones, others who have suffered unspeakable loss, future potential victims, all of us need not just thoughts and prayers, we need action and policies. The Jewish people know something about persecution. Yes, even in our glorious America. We understand well the price of passivity and silence, and we have seen much success in working with partner communities to advocate for change that will protect all of us. Therefore, today and every day, we are doubling down on our commitment to those efforts. Today and every day, we are standing together against hatred. Let us renew this evening our shared belief that we are empowered to make a difference, that we will not be silent, and that, as commanded in the Torah, we will not stand idly by while our neighbor's blood is spilled, that we will be upstanders, not bystanders. That we shall overcome someday, that we will live in peace someday. In just a moment, I will ask you to please rise if you are able and raise your voices in song. And if you are willing, I hope you will also join hands, reaching across to one another. You know how to do that. As Cantor Mo Glasman of our host synagogue leads us, and we sing together the civil rights anthem, "We Shall Overcome." Please rise.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I we shall overcome someday. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
Please be seated. Please welcome AJC Honorary President John M. Shapiro.
Well, that was truly beautiful. And actually, given the amount of time they spent putting makeup on me, I hope you can say the same about me. Good evening. It's my pleasure to be here to honor my friend and AJC President Harriet Schleifer. But before I make my comments, I would encourage you to turn to the screen because I think there's a wonderful video that has been prepared. So let me step aside and roll the videotape. When I think about Harriet Schleifer, I think about first the embodiment of Jewish pride. Harriet is a 24/7 Jew.
Harriet is thoughtful, she's intelligent, she's committed.
She has a focus like no one else.
Passionate and compassionate.
Harriet is truly one of a kind.
One of the most generous, kindest people I've ever met.
Harriet is a shul goer. She is there on Shabbos, and she has a purple and blue batik tallis that she doesn't take off when she goes to the Kiddush lunch. She wants to make sure that absolutely everybody feels that they have a place in the community.
Harriet Schleifer is an Eshet Chayil, a woman of valor.
We're sorry we can't be there in person to celebrate, but we will be cheering you on from afar and rooting for you in all of your next endeavors.
She is of almost unlimited capacity to give to everyone who needs from her. And that whether that's me, our children, our extended family, she gives it all and she gives it constantly.
When I think of Harriet Schleifer, I think about the definition of compassion. And I've seen this most especially with her late parents, both of whom were Holocaust survivors from Poland.
So when you think about Harriet's childhood, and you think about the experiences of her parents in a concentration camp, you can understand when Harriet is absolutely committed to never again.
She was so influenced by the heritage that her parents and grandparents left her, that this is what molded her into the kind of leader she became.
Harriet came into her presidency as the very first woman president of AJC in over 100 years. And she came in at the most difficult possible time.
It was not what she signed up for. Instead, it became a virtual organization, very few travel opportunities, lots of Zoom calls, but Harriet was there every step of the way. She didn't miss a beat.
One of the things I admire the most about her is her amazing ability to establish human connection.
I've had the privilege of traveling with her to Israel, to Morocco most recently, seen her interact with people of different faiths, different political orientations, She reaches people and she connects with people in a very sincere way, gets our message across and hears them. And what is more important in the kind of work that AJC does?
You know, you can talk to her, and she knows how to listen, she knows how to absorb. Some things she'll accept, others she won't. But she knows how to give a lending ear to other people's concerns. Very critical trait in terms of Jewish leadership.
She has a huge heart, and the combination of a huge heart with a big passion for Israel makes Harriet the kind of leader she is.
Harriet joined me on my first trip to Israel as part of AJC's Project Interchange, a trip that informs my work in Congress on everything from security assistance to Israel to bilateral cybersecurity cooperation between our two countries.
So many of us admire your efforts to deepen and enhance American, Jewish, Israel ties, strengthen Jewish identity, and enrich Jewish life.
The concept of opening a Warsaw office was presented some number of years ago. The director's office is named after Harriet's parents. They've got pictures of Harriet's parents, their story. For Harriet, I know she takes great pride in this, and I know for her, the office and the work it does is very, very gratifying.
When I think of Harriet Schleifer, I think about a day in 2017 in Warsaw, Poland. We were opening the Warsaw office of AJC. It was in a large auditorium filled to capacity with Polish officials and diplomats and members of the Jewish community and the AJC delegation. And we closed the wonderful program with Harriet Schleifer on stage alone, singing a cappella, first in Yiddish and then in Polish, lullabies that her parents had sung to her as a child.
Tichnor for mir, wer hat as a meidele, a malechel ha kleins.
They were beautiful, they were melodic, they were touching, and there was not a single dry eye in the house. That was, and that is, the soul, the neshama of Harriet Schleifer.
Some people are talkers, some people are dreamers, but Harriet is a doer who gets things done.
She's intelligent, she's compassionate,
Dedicated and passionate.
Harriet Schleifer is warmth.
Harriet Schleifer is a mensch in all ways. If you want to define mensch, that's Harriet.
Can you say I love you, Bobby?
I love you.
Well, Harriet, what a well-deserved tribute. And I can see that maybe 2070, that little boy will be taking your place. So Harriet, could you have imagined in your wildest dreams what an extraordinary presidency you've overseen? You had already made history by being the first woman president in AJC's 100-plus years. That could have been enough. But who could have imagined the arrival of COVID? Suddenly, you inherited a worldwide pandemic with all the ensuing chaos and disruption. Throughout this period, you managed the organization with resolve and good cheer. You brought everyone along with your inclusiveness and resolute spirit. In doing so, you helped to ensure that no one missed a beat. At this point, one could say, Dayenu. But of course, you then proceeded to lead AJC through perhaps the most profound change in its history, choosing a successor for David Harris, who obviously has created this institution in so many ways. I had the good fortune to be your partner in this effort, and so appreciated the way you managed to move our committee through a complicated process. You encouraged diversity of opinion while never losing track of the ultimate goal. You remained upbeat throughout the entire process and brought us to a spectacular conclusion. I'm proud to have worked with you, and thank you for truly being a president of historical consequence. As you contemplate the completion of your term, let me remind you that what the caterpillar calls the end, we call a butterfly. My best wishes from all of us as you soar to new heights. So now, on behalf of your entire family, AJC family, I'm supposed to give you a gift, but where are you? It's my honor to present you with a very special gift, which I'm going to explain this, which we hope will remind you of AJC and your unwavering commitment to what matters most to you and to all of us. Picture, you can see that up there. The customized paper cut was designed and created especially for you by a commissioned artist, Dana Levy from Teaneck, New Jersey.
Aww.
Sorry, Bostonian accent creeps in there. The paper cut features symbols of some of the things we feel represent you and your relationship to AJC. A globe at the center, flanked by bridges that connect all of us. A tzedakah box for giving charity. A siddur or prayer book, and an open Torah. The old city of Jerusalem. All of this stems from a large tree of life, or a large extended family tree, and its roots. We see the letter AJC. Finally, yet most prominently, the paper cut features the quote, Kol Yisrael Arei Lavim. All of Israel is responsible for one another. You could have authored that quote, Harriet. It is an understatement to say that you care so deeply for our people. And Harriet, believe me, the feeling is mutual. So let me present you with this. I'm not going. Well, it's attached, so let me. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to do this. So Harriet P. Schleifer, AJC President, June 2019 to June 2022, with the immense gratitude for your leadership in advocating a safer world for the Jewish people in Israel. Yeah, I know, we're supposed to get on either side of this thing. This is real. My wildest dream.
John, don't go away yet. Don't you think that we really are family? Don't we look like work twins? Think Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You're much cuter than Danny DeVito.
You know, when we're together, the photographers don't know where to shoot. You know, they're like this, and they're like this, and they're like this. So
I'll just bow to you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your really warm words. And I don't deserve what has been said here. You deserve these words. We're a team. We will always be a team. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here and even listening to these words, because none of us can do it alone. It takes all of us. So I will cherish this meaningful gift and your love. I will cherish it for the rest of my life. And I will cherish the opportunity you have given me. An opportunity, as I said earlier, of a lifetime. AJC is the best of the best. It's during my presidency that we launched 2 campaigns. It's up to us, and it certainly is. And reimagine what's possible. And we can, and we have. They're more than catchphrases. They're the ethos of AJC. They're charges to us. And we must take that charge with responsibility and optimism. optimism. Not words, but action. That's a directive in Judaism, and especially during times of personal communal struggle. This epitomizes AJC, walking the walk, traveling the traveled, going into new territories and maintaining old friendships that we worked very hard to build. The Jewish people face no shortage of struggles. We never have. At AJC, we assess the struggles, we evaluate their implications, and most importantly, we walk the walk. And we do so with determination and resolve, but with nuance, diplomacy, solid research, and centrism. I'm incredibly proud of all of you who make up AJC. If you're here for the first time, the 15th time, or the 50th time, and some of you are here for the 50th time, you know that you're going to leave here on Tuesday afternoon even more inspired and motivated to act. And you also know that this is only the beginning, not the end. We have a lot of work to do together, and I know we're up for it. At the same time, none of this would be possible without the remarkable professionals of AJC, led by the indefatigable, extraordinary David Harris. David, it's been a true honor to have grown into this organization under your leadership. You are the voice of principle and morality for the Jewish people and for all people. AJC exemplifies the commitment to Klal Yisrael. We are all responsible for one another. And thank you for us, for working together. Thank you for the honor and privilege of being your friend, your colleague, and may we all live to 120 to continue these deeds. Thank you.